Hello. So today we're going to have a quick look at the React useReducer hook. A useReducer is one of the less common hooks that you see in React courses, probably because it's generally used for more complex apps, and obviously in courses they tend to rely on much smaller apps. What exactly is useReducer? What does it do? Well, it basically accepts a reducer function with the application's initial state, and then it returns the current application state and dispatches a function. Clear as mud when I came across that quote, to be honest, but let's persevere and see what we can get. What we have to remember about useReducer is that it all comes back basically to JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript array reduce. So what does that do? Well, that applies a function to each element in the array that's passed to it, and then it returns just one value. That's why it's called reduce. It reduces it to one value. That value might be a string, it might be an array, or what have you, but it just reduces to one value. That can be really useful in React because when the state is really complex, or when calculating the next state depends on the previous state, then just having a reducer function, which is just going to take everything down to one value, can be really useful. It's similar to useState. useReducer is similar to the useState hook, and the useState hook is obviously perfect for just having relatively simple states maintained in components. According to the React documents, useReducer is usually preferable to useState when you have complex state logic that involves multiple subvalues, or, as we said before, when the next state depends on the previous one. So that's what useReducer is used for. Small demonstrations like the one we're looking at today are a bit contrived because the apps are just not really complex enough. But they do serve as an example, and you can at least see how it works and apply it to much bigger and more complex things in the future as is necessary. So what are we going to do today? Well, I've got set up here the sort of boilerplate code for a little app which is a carpet cleaning business. And what this carpet cleaning business does is, well, hey, it cleans carpets, but what the app does is it displays prices. So no CSS here whatsoever, I'm afraid. This is very bare bones stuff. I just want to concentrate on the useReducer. So we've got our price list. We've got a basic soap wash. We're going to set the price for that in a moment. And then we've got the added extras: £100 for stain remover, 200 for fragrance, 300 for deep clean, and 400 for your Norwegian carpet shine. Those are all optional. And the idea is that we can then display a total price. Something that, as I say, you could do in React without using useReducer. We don't need to use useReducer for this, but we are going to anyway. So here is the app. I've got just one component set up, and here I've made a quick list of the things we're going to need to do. And then all we're doing down here is returning basically what you see here. So we've got all of our elements, the buttons, etc. Nothing special to see there. The buttons have got an ID of the amount of money that option costs, and that's the only interesting thing really about those buttons. I've also just set up an empty function here which handles the button click. And that's all I've done. So at the moment, we've got no sign of useReducer anywhere. So the first thing on our list, it says import useReducer. So just like any other hook, I'm just going to put in here, we're going to import useReducer from React. So that one is done. Let's take it off the list. Next thing we want to do is set up an initial state. Now, initial state might quite often be 0. In this particular case, the initial state, so sorry, just to go back to the vanilla JavaScript array reduce method. So the initial state is optional there. If you were doing that typical thing of adding together an array of numbers, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're just going to put together a quick reduce function that just adds 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 3 is 6, 6 plus 4 is 10, which would be quite a typical sort of easy demo of the array reduce method. You could put an optional initial value in there, and that would do something which that would basically just allow the starting point to be other than the first element in the array. So if you put an initial state of 10 and then you had the 1, 2, 3, 4 array, that's going to actually add up to 20. Okay, so the function that I've just put up there, just a quick demo of a JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript, not useReducer, just a array reduce method. And so as you can see, we've got numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. If we console log the total nums we've got here, so that's the function to total those numbers. It takes in the total, takes in the increment, it adds them together. If we do that, we get 10 as expected. If we put in an initial value of, let's say, 100, we get 110. So that's all that just a little example really of reducing everything down to one number and having an initial value. So anyway, I digress. Back to React. So we're going to set up initial state. Now, the initial state in this case is not actually going to be 0 because over here in the price list, there's a basic cost which everybody has to pay. This is non-negotiable, and that is actually going to be £50. So I'm just going to put the initial state, and I'm going to set it as an object with the count value of 50. Now, with that set, we can probably actually go down to the bottom of the app and just update some of the output. Where are we? Okay, so that basic soap wash then, we can just put in here initial state count. Just refresh that, and there we are. We got our initial state of £50. That's absolutely fine. Right, so we've got the initial state sorted. The next we need to do is build up the function that useReducer is going to use. So useReducer applies a function to each element of the array is working through, or in this case, the state it's working on. So let's just call this one, what should we call this? Let's call it price reducer. That's a bit of a confusing name because it's actually going to be making the price bigger, not reducing it, but never mind. So the price reducer function, that is going to take in the state and the action. And we're going to use a switch here. So if we take in here the action type, which we can set up shortly. And then let's just open up some curly braces here. So the first case is going to be increment by 100, let's say. And in that case, we want to return, oh, we don't need capitals here, return so we're going to return a new value of count, and that's going to be the existing count plus 100. So that is our first case, and we just want to, we're actually going to need then, because we've got 4 potential add-ons, added extras, so we're going to need to have 4 of those plus a default. So we can take one away. So what are the prices we've got? We add 100, 200, 300, or 400. And in each case, we're just going to up the amount being added. And as I say, let's finish on a default. And that can just be to throw new error. Probably won't be needed, hopefully. Right, so that is the function that useReducer is going to use. Now, as you would have noticed, none of that is actually in the component. The component, which is just called main, is down here. And now we want to get to work in there a little bit. So, first thing we need to do is to call the hook inside the component. So a little bit like useState, we're going to have some state in here, and we're going to have dispatch as well. And it equals to useReducer. Now, useReducer needs to take in a couple of arguments. And, well, we've got them right here. We've got the initial state and the price reducer. So the function actually goes first. So it's price reducer, and the initial state is the second argument. Okay, so now all we need to do, let's just get that right out of the way, is handle the button clicks. I'm not doing this very elegantly, to be honest with you. Obviously, in a situation like this, you'd be much better, probably not with buttons, but with some kind of form, radials, or what have you. But if we go down and have a look at the buttons, each button has got an ID. So we're just going to use that for figuring out what to do with the buttons. So this handle increase, so each button calls in onClick method is handle increase. So we've got a handle increase here. We take in the event. So inside the button, let's just create type selected. We're going to go for in this case, and we're going to set that equal to the word increment in capitals, which we've already used in our switch function above. And then we're just going to add in the still got caps lock on the event target ID of the button that was clicked. What we're going to do then is we're going to use dispatch. So that was the second variable that we created with useReducer. So we've got our state here. Dispatch is what we're actually going to call. So let's just do that. I can't spell it. And what are we going to call with dispatch? Well, basically, we need to go with whatever we have got up here, so we just called that type there. That's rather generic, but that's okay. We can go with that. So we want to create an object in here. It's type, and then what we're actually sending off is going to be whatever came in from the button click. Type selected. Right. Last thing to do, we just want to complete, oh yes, the total price down here. So what is that total price going to be? It is, if we just have a look, where are we? Here, of course, it's going to be from state, and because we've got our initial state, which is this object with count, so it's going to be state.count. Where are we? Here. Right, let's see if we get any errors if we give it a save. So we've got our price list, basic soap wash, £50. That's non-negotiable, so that's our initial state. At the moment, the total price is 50. Let's see what happens if we add 100, and it goes up to 150. If we add the Norwegian carpet shine, my personal favorite, it goes up to 550. So in each case, we can add items to our shopping list effectively and update our state accordingly. So that's that. It is a very basic setup. As I say, it's a small and contrived example, but that is how the useReducer hook works. There are many, many articles and videos out there about it if you want to go more deeply into it. If you find it confusing, I certainly recommend going back to starting off basically with the vanilla JavaScript reduce method, array reduce, which kind of is the basis for all of this. And before you know it, you'll be into Redux and all sorts of other lovely things. Right. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.